You've seen the films, probably read the books, and possibly learned about fantastic mythicals like unicorns and dragons that were just too fantastic to have ever existed in real life. Or did they? It's time to find your favorite comfortable chair, sit back and relax as we reveal our top 10 mythical animals that existed in the wild. So if you thought the unicorn, basilisk, Cyclops, and even the Hobbit were made-up characters, think again as we explain the facts behind the mystery. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and press the bell icon for regular updates. So let's get started with number 10, the Direwolf. If you've ever watched Game of Thrones on TV, then you'll be well aware of the Direwolf. Unfortunately, Ghost, Greywind, Summer, Nymeria, and Shaggy Dog weren't actual direwolves. Rather, they were actual, real, grey wolves that were used to play the part of the direwolves in the story. From fossilized remains that scientists have found in the infamous Los Angeles tar pits, the real direwolf was probably 20% larger than the common grey wolf that still exists in parts of the Americas and Europe to this day. It's also believed that although we call them wolves, the direwolf was descended from a completely different evolutionary path with no common ancestry between them. Scientists have been able to confirm that the direwolf roamed much of North America around 250,000 years ago until about 13,000 years ago. They're not entirely sure why the direwolf died out, but they believe it was likely something to do with the fact that larger prey animals that the direwolf specialized in hunting, such as small mammoths, mastodons, bison, and ancient horses, were themselves killed off, likely by early human hunters that had crossed the land bridge that had formed between Russia and what is now Alaska. Staying with the prehistoric focus, let's move on to our number 9. This time, without the rainbows, the unicorn. Whilst we commonly think of the unicorn as a graceful, perfectly groomed horse, it may well have been factually based on an ancient rhino that lived in Siberia up to around 39,000 years ago. Known commonly as the Siberian rhino, these guys typically weighed up to 4 tons with a single, huge horn in the middle of its head. Of course, it begs the question of how could one mistake a 4-ton behemoth of a rhino for the graceful athleticism of the modern rendition of a horse. But if the source of the story is from a time when these guys were still roaming the earth, then we all know how stories based on word of mouth can change over the years. Still, from a rhino to a horse? Anyway, moving on to number 8, the Komodo Dragon. Okay, so we're not talking about the type of dragon that can fly and breathe fire. You may have to wait a little bit longer for that. The Komodo dragon was in fact a potentially mythological creature for hundreds of years, following the publication of one of the first European maps called the Linux Globe. On one part of the map, you can see a warning that states, Hic sunt dracones, or for those of us not up to date on our Latin, here be dragons. Because the map was created in 1510, much of the Western world took the warning at face value, expecting this small group of islands in Indonesia to be the home to giant flying reptiles. It wasn't until the early 20th century that scientists were finally able to explain exactly what the Komodo dragon really was, and indeed still is. Very big and very real. On to number 7, the Australian Bunyip. Sometimes known as the Australian Loch Ness Monster, the Australian Bunyip is another potentially scary mythological creature that may have some basis in fact. Indigenous Australian people tell the story of the Bunyip being able to tear trees out by their roots, and were themselves almost as tall as the gum trees they were mauling. Whilst it may all sound a bit far-fetched, it may well be traceable to the now extinct Pallarkestes assail, or otherwise commonly known as a huge, and we mean really huge, wombat-like creature. According to research from scientists, the Pallarkestes is believed to have used its powerful forelimbs to pull up shrubs and tear at tree bark. At number 6, the Basilisk. No, we don't mean the gigantic CGI cobra that's best friends with Tom Riddle. In this case, we mean the infamous Basilisk, which terrorized Warsaw in 1587, of which it is claimed killed a number of people. This version of the Basilisk refers to a beast apparently feared across Europe for many centuries. It is said to resemble a snake with a crest around its head that is hatched from an egg laid by a male chicken, or rooster. That in and of itself is strange and scary, but the legend goes on to say that the basilisk's egg is incubated by a toad-like creature. Strange as it may seem, there is a rational explanation for a rooster laying an egg, in that it's more likely a hen with a hormone imbalance that actually makes it appear as though it may be a rooster. As for the deaths of those people, well, it all seems as though the author of the account never actually confirmed what it was, but it could well have been a common European viper. Very real, but much smaller than the one that attacked Harry Potter. Moving on to number 5, the Cyclops. The history of the mythical one-eyed monster that terrorized Odysseus and ate half his remaining army originated with the ancient Greeks. The story goes that this group of giants with a single eye in the middle of their forehead were the creation of Poseidon, god of the seas. There doesn't ever appear to have been any gigantic human remains found that we can look at and say, right then, that looks like a Cyclops. However, paleontologists, people who study ancient life, have recently unearthed a series of bones on the island of Crete, part of ancient Greece, that includes the remains of a skull of a huge elephant thought to be around 8 million years old. The skull has a huge hole right in the middle of its head, which would have been for the trunk of this massive beast. But you can imagine how anyone not fully understanding what the fossilized remains of such an animal really were, jumping to the conclusion that a beast such as a Cyclops could have lived thousands of years ago. At number 4 is the Kraken, the feared sea monster from ancient Norse legend. The Kraken was said to attack ships sailing the North Atlantic from the coasts of Norway to the Greenland Sea. The sheer size of the beast meant it could wrap an entire ship with its tentacles and drag it down to the murky depths of the ocean floor, where it would devour all the sailors. Could that really be true? Well, it would of course need to be a truly massive beast to drag down an entire ship, so perhaps that part of the story may be somewhat exaggerated. However, we do have documented evidence of giant squid that can grow up to 43 feet in length, and that's big. That being said, the giant squid is a creature that prefers to live in the deep ocean and rarely visits the shallower areas, so you should be safe enough if you ever go sailing in Greenland. Our number 3 is the Hobbit. The story of Bilbo and Frodo setting out across Middle-earth and doing battle with dragons and wizards is one that we've likely all watched many times on TV and at the cinema. And whilst we're unlikely to find the remains of trolls, orcs, or the mighty wizard Gandalf, scientists have found a long-lost species of human-like people that do in fact resemble the fictional Hobbit. On an isolated Indonesian island, a race of hominins that typically appear to have been no more than around 4 feet, with a brain roughly a third of that of a modern human's, have been identified to have existed around 200,000 years ago. No one really understands how they actually managed to get to where they were found, given the island is many miles away from the mainland, yet H. floresiensis, as they're known scientifically, appeared to have prospered for millennia, right up until the time modern humans began inhabiting this part of the world, at which point it appears the little hobbits mysteriously died out. Number 2. Dragons. And yes, this time we mean the winged, fire-breathing version. The subject of countless legends, sagas, books, and of course, films, dragons have been a part of human mythology for thousands of years, but could they have really been based on a real living creature? Well, to be fair, it's highly unlikely that any human, no matter how far we go back in time, will have ever seen a flying dragon of the type we've become accustomed to in the movies. But it's not difficult to understand where the legend may have come from. We know fossilized remains of dinosaurs like the Triceratops and the Stegosaurus will all have been seen by humans dating back thousands of years. There's also a now extinct giraffe called the Sammotherium, of which the fossilized skull looks uncannily like a dragon's head. So, in terms of how dragons might look, it's not too difficult to understand. That all being said, we are still waiting for scientists to let us know how anything like this could have flown and breathed fire. Okay, number 1 in our top 10 list of mythical animals that existed in the wild, the werewolf. It's not entirely clear where the modern stereotype version of the werewolf was derived from, but we do know of many stories from around the world depicting men and women magically transforming into wild dogs. We also know that in certain parts of the world, where wild dogs and wolves were not common, that the localized human population would simply substitute another known wild animal, such as a big cat. So where did it come from? For thousands of years, mankind has taken the skins of animals he's hunted and used them in an effort to enable him to sneak up on prey he's stalking. We also know that certain Native American tribes, such as the Pawnee people, would use the skin of wolves to hide from other groups whilst they were spying on them. Add to this the fact that rabies would have been very common, whereby any human bitten by an infected animal would have gone mad and likely tried to bite other people. We can see how the myth has grown over time. Watching somebody in a wolfskin foaming at the mouth, trembling, and generally going mad would be a great story for anyone to pass down to others. Okay, well that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. It's been fun having you with us. Did you agree with our picks? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. We'll see you again soon.